I'm back to talk to you about Faith Life Church. As I told you earlier, I wanted to go through the information that we received from the whistleblowers so far. There were 3 whistleblowers that were on Laura Lynn's show initially, and then 3 additional ones more recently. So what I want to do in this video is talk about the information that they shared in the context of how a prosecutor might look at what they shared. What could be evidence, what might not be, what it could be used for, arguments that can be made, things like that. So if you don't know me, if you haven't watched any other videos before, my name is Vanessa Johnson. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing in May, it'll be 26 years. I practiced initially in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then I moved to Michigan and worked in Detroit. So I took 3 different bar exams because I took them all early on. So I did not actually motion into any of these states that I practiced in. So I had to sit for each bar. And then now I'm in Florida. So I've been in Florida since 2005. And early on in my career, I practiced criminal law. And I was a prosecutor. And I specialized in SA against children. And I did that in Detroit. I also prosecuted other cases as well. I did all kinds, anything that you can think of. Murder, drugs, assault, theft. But my specialization was as a child SA prosecutor, which sparked my attention after the news came out about Daystar. And now I'm here talking about Faith Life Church. So let's get started. All right, so we're gonna go through, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on because my eyes are just horrible. So these are my readers, so sorry that they are so big, but it's gonna help me. All right, so Connie Mcve, she was the first one that was talking. And so around September of 2023, she said that she and her husband had to stop living in their home. They had black mold. They went to go live with different friends. And at one point, there was a teenage girl that was living in one of the homes. And she confided in Connie, stating that she was texting and had phone calls in the middle of the night with Tom Cassie. So if you don't already know, Tom Cassie is the son of Gary and Brenda Cassie. Gary and Brenda Cassie are the pastors of Faith Life Church in Ohio. And Connie said that the young girl's mother seemed to have waved off any concern, actually referring to the daughter as a mini Alexis, apparently referring to Tom's wife, and that she was Tom's new best friend, which was disturbing to Connie because the girl was 16, Tom was 28 and married. So this mother, was she so starstruck with the Cassies or with Tom, or just derelict in her duties and did not see that perhaps she and her daughter, and maybe even the whole community, all of Faith Life, were getting groomed, and they did not identify that? I don't know. I think that, we're just in the beginning stages. We're going to see more and more come out. So Connie shares that this girl went over to Tom's house with a sibling, and Connie thought that it was weird and wrong. And then a couple weeks later, she says that the fire and ice play, which we learn from other people, that this is a play that they do at Faith Life Church around Halloween, which is an alternative to Halloween, so that kids can partake in that. And apparently this young girl had texted a teenage boy, and apparently Tom got mad about it and showed Connie the text messages. It's not clear whether Connie actually has the text messages or if she was just shown the text messages. Would these text messages come in as evidence between the young girl and Tom? Possibly. They could, if they're coming in through the young girl. Not sure if this young girl is even been identified as a potential witness, or one who is cooperating, or one who could potentially be considered a victim. Don't know that yet. So any evidence, text messages, videos, even statements, if there's a challenge to something, this would be taken care of before they go to trial. It's an evidentiary hearing that would be held, and there could be a ton of them. If they want to throw out, if the defense is trying to strike something or the prosecution is trying to get something in, they have evidentiary hearings before the judge. The judge is the gatekeeper. The judge will decide whether that evidence gets in front of the jury. If you watch court TV or any true crime or any, court hearings, court trials, you'll see that. Sometimes you'll see a witness testifying and then the jury's not in there, but you know that there is a jury. They're just proffering evidence. It's a proffer, an offer to see if the judge will agree to what comes in, what doesn't. Maybe some of it will come in and some of it won't. All right, so Connie told the young girl that this was a bad situation and that she did not owe Tom an explanation as to why she was texting a boy. And that is so concerning. So that's evidence of controlling, grooming, manipulation, possibly. And then Connie tells about a story that Tom was going out of town for 2 weeks, and the girl had an urgency to go speak to him and actually went to his house between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. and they were allegedly on a fishing dock hanging out, and apparently she mentioned something about cameras being on the dock. I don't know, and it wasn't mentioned. I don't know if there's any video of them there or what that might look like, but that's what we know, and that is evidence of grooming. So people, I see this on, especially after IHOP, after that report came out, and just different channels where people are talking about it, and some people say, oh, those girls, they knew what they were doing. They kept coming back. And if you're referring to a minor, the minor has no obligation to do anything in any of these scenarios. A minor can't even contract. So remember that, because I'm going to talk about that in a bit when we get to somebody about the NDA. So whether a minor even says, yes, I'll have sex with you, to the adult, it's still statutory R, because the child cannot agree. They're not complicit in this. They are not going along with it. They're not making a decision that can be used against them, because it's statutory. That's the way the law is written, and it's written for good reason, because they're children. Their minds are not developed. We're supposed to protect children. So if you ever see that, please respond to people that are saying that, even if it's 16 and maybe the statutory provision in that state protects 16 and below, and the age of consent is 17. If you're 16, you cannot consent. It's a statute. I've had a case once where the victim was 11 and the defendant was in his early 20s, and the 11-year-old, she really did look like she was 18. Didn't matter. She even told him that she was older. Doesn't matter. It's statutory R. And he admitted that he had sex with her because he thought that she was of age. But guess what? He went to prison. It's the way it works. All right, so Connie said that she wanted to protect this young girl. She wanted to protect the family and the ministry. So we see clearly she is level-headed. She's rational. She's not under the spell. She hasn't been groomed. She realizes that this is wrong. At the very least, it's a really bad look, because Tom is married and he's having these communications with a minor. So the girl's mother doesn't care. And Connie is concerned. So she goes to leadership, and she says that she goes to Alicia Cassie, who is married to Tim, who is a son of Gary and Brenda and also a brother to Tom. And Connie says that Alicia said, I can't tell you anything. I believe you. You're not crazy. We'll take care of it. So can Connie come into court and testify to what Alicia said? Probably not, because it's hearsay. Is there a circumstance that it could come in, depending if it's, something that she can show that she did as a result of that, and it's called mental impression or present sense impression. But also, if Alicia comes in and testifies for a reason, maybe she's charged, and she decides to take the stand and she testifies differently, Connie's testimony can come in and impeach her, because Connie can give direct testimony to anything that Alicia said to her. So Connie is already on the alert that Tom is having inappropriate communication and contact with a young girl. And then she finds out that summer, Tom is leading the vacation Bible school over that girl and other children. So Connie goes to Alicia again and says Tom shouldn't be around the young girl and other teenagers. And at this point, Alicia says, I've thrown out all the red flags that I can throw out. You can go ahead and talk to the head pastors, but you have your husband's job to think about. I would want this statement in evidence. Absolutely. And if you don't know what hearsay is or isn't, hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So I would want this statement in. If I was the prosecutor, I would say, this is up to the prosecutor. Remember, they're going to collect all this evidence and figure out what's the best evidence. But that is important to me, because we later find out that he was fired. So this is to show that the culture, the atmosphere, the control, the manipulation, that the whole thing that's going on there. And if, it can show the effect of the listener, here it would be Connie, then I would say I'm not offering it for the truth, but rather what that statement did, the impact, the effect that it had on the one that it was made to. So Connie and her husband was essentially warned at that point by that statement through Alicia. Pushing this could cost him his job, and we learned that it did. So this is evidence of the culture there, and the prosecutor is going to be preparing their theme. They're going to be weaving that in and out of their case through the witnesses, through the evidence. Based on what we know so far, and I'm jumping ahead a bit, but if you've watched all 6 of the whistleblowers, we know that this was an extremely toxic, controlling, manipulative, abusive, spiritually abusive atmosphere that covered up inappropriate conduct, at the very least, was a cesspool of just abusing the staff, making them feel bad, making them feel like they weren't good employees, and making them feel bad if they felt like they should be fairly compensated. I don't know, do these ministries not have HR? I talked about this in a video that I talked about Daystar, where the nephew came forward and there were so many concerns. And I just, this is very similar to Daystar, where they have a minimal body of a board of directors. They have, and from what these whistleblowers are saying, similarly with Faith Life, it's the family that's controlling everything. They're at the top, and then family members that they know that they're good friends with. So this is what we're seeing. There's just no oversight. These ministries are just running rampant, and they have no oversight, and they're doing whatever they want to do. Well, that's coming to an end, it appears, because everything is coming out now. So Connie's husband was the controller at Faith Life Church, and he apparently raised questions to pastors, and from what she said, it seemed like there was a time, I think in this general vicinity of time, that they prophesied over him. And she said that it was a prophecy of death, and they have the audio recording. And so Brenda, I can't read, put her hands on her husband and said, mortal wound, you have a choice to make. Boy, would I want to bring that in. Absolutely. I would want that brought into evidence. And her husband has personal knowledge. Based upon what she was saying, it doesn't appear to me that she was actually there but there's a recording of this, and he was there. And then after this, he asked a pastor what this meant, and they said, deadly flesh wound. Oh my gosh, these people insane. Is this the regular course of business at Faith Life Church? Is that what they use prophecy for? My goodness. Okay. So Connie said that she and her husband were shaken up after that, rightfully so. And then less than a month later, he's fired. Now we talk about the NDA. People have asked me about NDAs, and I keep forgetting to bring it up. I'm glad I'm talking about it here. So this is what I have to say about them. Do they belong in church? Absolutely not. No, there'd be no reason to have an NDA in church. That's a red flag. It's a red flag when churches aren't transparent about all of their goings on. They should be transparent. That's just the nature of the church. You want to know that they're honest, that they're truthful. That's what we learn in the Bible. That's what Jesus says. He's the truth, the life, the way. So if you're preaching the Bible, I would believe that you want to be aligned with Jesus and that you are truthful. So evidence of use of an NDA, to me, shows that you're trying to hide something. And it's not two ways, because people say that to me all the time. They're like, well, how can, if they have an NDA and they're not to say anything to the other person too? No, it's not how that works. The NDA is a contractual agreement, and the person that they're trying to shut up is going to sign it, and they're going to sign it in exchange for consideration. So her husband would have had to have received something. The consideration is typically money. So in order for this to be a valid contract agreement, he would have had to have received something in exchange for his signature and agreement as to all the conditions of the NDA. By the way, you can never agree that you're going to do something or cover up something that's criminal. An NDA does not protect you in that regard. But there is money that is exchanged for that. So next, let's talk about what they did, and they were smart to do this, because the lawyers for Faith Life included Connie's name, the wife, and a child. Doesn't say how old, but first of all, it's a child. A child cannot contract. Remember I said that earlier? They cannot enter into a contract. You know, have you ever had this experience where your kids, they're in high school and they're not 18 and they go to a gym and then the gym signs them up on a membership? That's not valid. They can't contract. So adding this child in, that is so egregious to me that an attorney would do that. You know that you can't. Why would you even do that? So bizarre. So luckily they had their attorney rewrite it, and it was to their satisfaction, and the husband signed it, and they separated and parted ways. Amen to that. But Connie said that the day after her husband got fired, the news broke out about Daystar, and then that's when she and other people were getting on Laura Lynn's videos and, you know, communicating in the comments. So Connie said that Nicole, who we're going to hear from in a minute, reached out to her based upon comments that she made, and then they got in contact with Emily. Emily's the third young lady who was in that video. So Connie discussed a message that Gary gave at church, and she referred to it as the Sunday before she came onto the program, I think. And she said that he said, we know this, that he said if there's any abuse going on, contact the police and reach out to their pastoral care team. And she said, if anybody's watching this, don't reach out to the pastoral care team because they're covering it up. And I love that she said that. And if for some reason people have not gotten it so far, if you happen to be a victim or a whistleblower, you're up there at Faith Life, you know something about it, or any other church, stop. Do not go to the church. Do not even go to somebody that volunteers at the church that you trust. No. Go to the police. Report anything that you think might be a crime, cover up, what have you. go to the police. Licking County Sheriff's Office is the agency investigating. So Connie also mentioned that a 16-year-old was groomed by Tom, who is now currently 18. She just briefly mentioned that. Not sure if that 16-year-old was a victim. I guess more on that at a later date. Connie also confirmed that Tom left Faith Life Church at the end of August, but she also said that he still continued to come in and out of the building, and it was not as if he was gone. She also said that when Tom left, Tom's assistant had a sudden departure. And she shut down her social media. As a prosecutor, I would want to talk to this person. She is a person of interest. If she's his assistant, she sees the comings and goings and behavior and all kinds of stuff. I would want to get to her. So before moving on to the next potential witness and whistleblower, let's just recap the highlights from what Connie shared. And I'm sure that there's a lot more that she knows or that she has perhaps developed as people have maybe reached out to her. I would expect that charges will be filed against Tom based upon what we know. I'm not going to address what happens if there are no charges. We've already gone through the conflict issues. There is an agency investigating. I believe that there must be charges filed against him. I do hear that there are other perpetrators. We'll see what happens with that. I have no idea who they are. But Connie can establish that a minor was meeting up with Tom while he was married. And this is a common theme that I would show as a prosecutor. That these are his plans, these are his schemes, lack of mistake, common thread, underage girls, motive, opportunity. Connie can also establish that she was so concerned that she went to the child's mother. That did nothing. She went to leadership, who then essentially threatened her husband's job, and her husband was in fact fired. She sets the stage. She gives some background. I would want to use her as a witness, as a prosecutor. And then the threat, mortal wound. All right, the next person we have is Nicole Berger. And she talked about how she was watching Laura Lynn's videos and she began commenting and reaching out. And then she and Connie had coffee, and then they reached out to Emily and other people. And Nicole said that when they found out that there was an actual victim, her husband, who is a detective, got involved. And they took it to Knox County because, and she explained it correctly, the first thing you do is you have to figure out where that crime took place. So, for instance, I would have crimes, that I signed a warrant on that happened in Wayne County, which is Detroit, right? But the victim also told me that it happened in Macomb County, it happened in Oakland County. Well, those crimes would have to go to those prosecutors at those counties. So those are two different counties that are above Wayne County, but they're close. They're all considered the Detroit metro area, but they're separate counties. I was actually in Detroit, so I couldn't prosecute a crime that occurred in a different city or county. If it was a city within Wayne County, I could, because there's a ton of cities that are in Wayne County. So you get it. There has to be jurisdiction first. So because of that, it appears that they learned that these things happen in Knox County, and they took it there, but then quickly learned that since Drenda has a political position there, they were told that they could not investigate, and that's when it was sent over to the AG's office, the BCI, and it was not moving there. We all know what happened. She talked about that. Dave Yost, friends with the Cassie's, conflict, goes back to Knox County, and they have to decide where to go, and that's why we know, I think it's just days later, or maybe even a week, then it was sent over, or in one article it says handed off to Licking County. Nicole talked about Tom's current wife being in the youth group before they were married, and that she went to HR about the relationship. Oh, so there was going to HR about the relationship. And apparently, these are my notes. So not clear exactly what happened there, but then and it could be my notes, and she spoke to the mother, and then the mother seemed to say it wasn't a big deal and said something about Kenneth Copeland's daughter having been divorced 3 times. That seems as though it's in the context of the mother knew that the marriage was on the horizon for her child. I don't know. But the man was currently married, and her child was a minor. So, okay, we do see that there is HR because Nicole talked about it. Well, shame on you, HR, for not doing anything. But we know you're clearly under the spell of Drenda. So Nicole said that she thought that this was clearly a grooming situation, and she was left with being told, don't gossip and don't talk about it. So that type of thing is very important because we want to establish grooming, but can she just make that statement in court? No, there has to be a basis for it. She would have to have personal knowledge. She would have to be able to testify as to things that she saw that would fall into that grooming category. Then she says that Tom got divorced, and that her son, Nicole said that her son saw a post of the marriage to his new wife, and that was concerning. And then she was talking to ex-staff members, and they said that they were gaslit not to talk, which suggests that they knew. So these are more people that could be potential witnesses. They can set the stage, paint the picture for the prosecutor to establish what that environment looked like there. As a prosecutor, I would want to talk to all of these ex-staff members. And you might be thinking, why is this investigation taking so long? I suspect that there's hundreds of people that they are likely interviewing. They are likely going through texts, videos, pictures, and it's a long process. And perhaps they want to do it at one time, get all the people charged that they want to charge. And Nicole being a witness, that's possible. And, you know, she has direct knowledge of how this came into being. So when I look at it from a standpoint of setting the stage for the jury, because as a prosecutor, you're educating the jury. You're doing that when you're picking the jury through the voir dire. You're asking them questions to determine whether they can be a fair and unbiased juror. And you're also weaving in your facts. You're weaving in your theme in that, as well as the law, because you want to make sure that they can follow the law, apply the facts to the law that the judge is going to give them. You always talk about that as a prosecutor. And she's got that setup of her and her husband being involved, because when they learned of that there was an actual victim, that's when the wheels got in motion. So I would use her for that purpose. Next, we have Emily Bright, and she said that she was in the youth group at age 16, and this was in about 2010 or 2011, and that she had never been in a mega church before. And she talked about how the church, it really appealed to the teenage mindset because of the cool music and the cool atmosphere. And she met Olivia, who she described as a sister to her. And it is clear, we know Olivia is one of the victims that have been named, Olivia Wooten. She is friends with Emily. And Emily said that Olivia opened up to her and that she did not get into the details. That's fine. That's not for us to discuss. We're going to hear about it. And Olivia said that she did tell people about what happened to her. That is key to me right now. She did tell people about what happened to her. If those people were required to report, which I believe that they would have been if they're on staff, I would investigate them. She said that people swept it under the rug. Well, I want to know who those people are as a prosecutor. Because in my position is, yeah, we know the perpetrator is bad. And I say this a lot in the context of, you know, the ministry leaders that are out there. We know that some of them are bad, right? But the ones that are doing their bidding, I think, are even worse. We already know that those bad actors are out there. I have this conversation with my husband because we talk about just issues in life, you know? And it's in the context of every situation. You could have a bad boss. And the ones that don't report, especially if the boss is abusive and they don't report and they just go along with it, I think that those people, of course, they're cowards, but they're just as bad, if not worse, because they keep that going. That atmosphere remains. Yes, the one person did it, but you know what? You could have stopped it. You could have stopped it, and they didn't. So Emily said that she was appalled and shocked when she learned about these things, but she said that she wasn't surprised because of her personal knowledge of things that was going on in the youth groups and what she saw as an employee. That's important. So I would definitely be using Emily as a witness. She saw things. She talks about some of the things, but I think there's a lot more. And that would be cultivated through interviews with the police and or the prosecutor. And Emily said that people were told not to question the Cassies, not to question anybody in authority at Faith Life. Well, this appears to be the general consensus. Everybody is saying that. Now, you could say that about any place, but again, this is a church. If you have an issue, you should be free to report that issue. If I'm at a church and I'm seeing abuse, I mean, you bet I am going to talk to people about it. And if I see a crime, I'm going to go report it, period. Are there just not that many people out there that would do that? Seems so strange to me. Did they really have everybody under a spell? Were they really that good at grooming? Now with Emily, she said that she didn't know how bad it was. She didn't even know about what happened to her friend. It appears it took some time for her friend to come out. Emily talked about that there was a buzz on Reddit in 2023 and a thread called Crazy Churches in Columbus, and Faith Life was listed as one of them. And there was a comment about Tom Cassie as a pedophile, and someone said everybody knew about it, but no one was doing anything about it. Well, I think now people are coming forward. So I would like to get to the everyone and find out what they knew and what they did. Because again, if they're in a position of leadership and they didn't report, couldn't that be a crime? Yeah, depending on the statute there. So what I've heard so far, it sounds like not only Tom and the other alleged perpetrators are getting investigated, but I would also suspect that Gary, Drenda, Tim, and Alicia should be getting investigated. You know, everybody's watched true crime or movies and stuff, and people can flip on each other. If there are charges against Tim and Alicia, perhaps they would cooperate to provide testimony and granted immunity to provide testimony against Tom, Gary, and Drenda. And maybe there's others, I don't know. But this is just based upon what we've learned so far. If Gary and Drenda and Tim and Alicia have covered up these crimes, they should be charged as well. So I guess that's something that we should just watch and see what happens. So Emily said that this thread popped up again in 2024. Again, people talking about Tom as a predator, and then she said it blew up. And then Olivia saw it, and then it appears that's when they were talking about it. So Emily said that she had suspicions that Tim and Alicia knew. Alicia, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. And again, that would be of interest to me. Emily talked about the youth group being in fear, that they were scared of stepping out of line. I wonder if these youth discussed these issues with their parents, or did they have parents that were like this young girl who didn't care that her child was meeting up with a married man, Tom? Were they all under that spell? Emily said that she was getting contacted by people every day. So hopefully there are people coming forward, and I anticipate that this is going to be huge. This is going to be a huge investigation. Which, again, leads me to believe why we haven't seen charges, because I would think that we would have charges by now. But again, if this is much bigger than we perceive it to be, that could be why it's taking so long. Emily said that when she was part of the youth group, Tom was married to his first wife, and that he would not wear his wedding ring, and he had excuses for not wearing it. If she has personal knowledge of this, she has had communication with Tom. He made statements. Those things can come into evidence in a case against Tom. A statement against his interest that he made to somebody else. It's not hearsay. So Emily also said that the girls that were in youth group were obsessed with Tom. He cultivated that. And there is no way that the leaders of the church didn't know that. There is no way that Gary and Drenda didn't know that. I remember somebody referring to Drenda saying that, oh, the kids think of him as a rock star. I think that's coming up next soon. You knew. You knew. It's horrible. Then Emily speaks out about a friend who was 16, and that Tom told her that God put it on his heart to reach out to her. Nobody else gets him like her, and all the grooming stuff. And again, if Emily is called as a witness for that purpose, this would be hearsay. So it would have to be the 16-year-old, who probably isn't now. I mean, she's probably an adult now, who had the direct communication with Tom, because she can bring in those statements that Tom said to her. Again, establishing the grooming, establishing the mode of operation, the intent, the plan, the scheme, the plot. Emily talked about Tom isolating people, pressuring them to do things. Well, she didn't get into it, but what are those things that he pressured them to do? If they are of a sexual nature, then with minors, those are crimes. So Emily said that she was on the media team. She became a team member running the weekly meetings, and she would meet with, and that she met with Tom and Alicia because they were youth group pastors. And that they told her Tom was stepping down from the worship group, and that the way they explained it or described it to her was that kids thought he was cool and wanted to be like him, and it was too distracting, kind of phasing him out. Well, that goes back to your knowledge of, that kids found that he was cool. No way that you didn't know that he was doing these things, Tim and Alicia. No way. Absolutely not. And Emily said that talking to Tim and Alicia, they brushed it off, saying that they were terrified of Drenda. Does this remind you of Joni? People terrified of Joni because she's got their stones in her pockets. Nothing new under the sun. And then Emily, this was interesting to me. Emily explained a night of worship where Drenda was trying to force her down as if, she was slain in the spirit. So she's pushing on her forehead. Good for you, Emily, not doing that. Standing your ground and digging in your heels. Not putting up with that clown show. Very proud of you. Emily described Brenda as having a very bold personality, in that she was described as a mama bear, tough mama bear. That's interesting, and we see this time and time again. I've talked about this repeatedly. For instance, there could be a ministry leader who has done something good. Say they have advocated for victims in the past for one person, but perhaps they didn't on others. That doesn't mean that they're good on all accounts. There could be something that a person does that's really good, but that doesn't we can't logically conclude that they're good in every aspect of their life. And that is a problem for people. We all see it in every aspect of life. I can say one thing about, oh, well, that attorney that I've dealt with, I didn't have that problem with him or her. And then one of my partners will say, well, this and this happened. My experience doesn't get erased because they had a bad experience. I appreciate the fact they had a bad experience. Maybe it was a bad day. Maybe they clash. And people get caught up in this a lot. I see this in comments all the time. Well, so-and-so, they're on it for Israel. That does not mean anything to me if you're abusing children. Matter of fact, it negates the good that you do. Come on, let's have common sense, people. Brenda might be a tough mama bear to Tom, but clearly she wasn't to Kirsten. You can have multiple truths going on at the same time, and they appear to conflict. So one person can say, oh no, that's a tough mama bear. Was she for Kirsten? Not when it came to Tom. Emily talked about Gary being timid, not politically focused, Brenda the opposite, and then Gary would ramp it up, and that it appeared from what she was saying that Tom was emboldened as well, getting away with everything. And in regard to the invitation of her and her friend, so it appears that, I think she said she was 18 at the time when Tom invited her and her friend to his house when his wife wasn't there. Would I want that in evidence? Yeah. Emily would make a very good witness. She would. I mean, they all would. All of these young ladies would. Emily would be able to testify that this gives her so much credibility too, because she's not saying that she's a victim. She's not saying that something happened to her. In fact, she's saying that he invited me to his house. I was 18. Nothing happened. This could go two ways. As a defense attorney, they could say, oh, look, she got invited too and nothing happened there. But the prosecutor can also show it as corroboration of the others, that this was a repeated thing. He would invite young ladies to his house while his wife wasn't there. And it appears that things could have happened at those times that they were invited there. And if so, I would want corroboration that this is something that he regularly did. Emily made a statement that abuse was not only tolerated but permitted. And so you can't make a blanket statement. You have to give examples, right? You have to have personal knowledge in order to testify, and perhaps she does. It has to paint that picture of that environment. So Emily described the Cassies as the Kardashians of Ohio, which is very, very interesting to me. I've never heard of any ministry being called the Kardashians of their state. Perhaps that would have put anybody on notice. That is a huge red flag. Especially in the context of this prosperity teaching. The fact that they have a jet, that's what I hear. I don't know. That's what I hear. They have lots of money. They have lots of wealth. They have lots of pull position. They've got businesses. She even talked about a Ponzi scheme. Oh, if I was a prosecutor, I'd be getting into that as well. talking about money so much. So if that's the case, that would be a huge red flag to not associate or be a part of this ministry. But I get it. People are there. I'm just armchairing this. But that would be a huge red flag. If anybody said that about a ministry, I'm not there. I would have no interest or attraction to that whatsoever. Emily talked about being paid $10 an hour. She was the audio engineer for all services, conferences, TV tapings. They launched a band. She helped record the album. She was told, better not ask for more pay. She's told, you better have a heart for ministry. Those are the lines that you see. You need to have a servant's heart. We're a ministry here. You're doing this for the Lord. They'll work you to death. Meanwhile, they're reaping all the spoils. Peasants, you better not ask. I'm in my queen's court getting waited on hand and foot, but you peasants, you better not ask anything. Sound familiar? Emily then brought up the book called Undercover by John Bevere. So when I was baptized about 18 years ago, this was gifted to me. And I read it back then, and I liked it. Now, I was a baby Christian. I haven't read it since then. If any of you have read it recently, let me know your thoughts about it. I don't feel like going back and reading it. I liked it at the time. But Emily said that the abuse and narcissism skyrocketed after they implemented use of that book in their ministry, which is entirely disturbing. Again, you can take something good and twist it, right? So I'm not saying anything about the book. I don't remember the book. You could take something bad and make it bad. You could take something bad and make it good. She also said that they were told to submit to their authority. Okay. So we know that you have to submit to your bosses, right? Even in the secular, I expect my staff to submit to me. The attorneys that work for me submit to me, but not in a dictatorial nature. I don't take advantage of anybody. I just expect them to do their job. And guess what? They can come to me if they have concerns, and they do. Simple as that. How hard is that? If they had concerns, they could also go to HR, but they do come to me because they trust me. This is a secular business. And you're a church. Maybe, maybe not. But they have set it up so that people are frightened of them. I do not want that of my staff. I do not want people frightened of me. Is that healthy? Is that what Jesus would do? Emily said that the staff were bullied and made to cry. Any of you that own a business or run a business, do you do that to your staff? Any of you that are watching, that are, my audience, the ones that I see coming back over and over again and they're commenting, you guys, we're all on the same page. I don't believe you do that. So why should any ministry do this to people? It's totally unacceptable. Speaking of unacceptable, Emily was talking about the media team being called into Gary and Drenda's office that they were putting on the Christmas show, I think she said. And they weren't going fast enough. And they're told, your work is unacceptable and you need to do better. Not, thank you for sacrificing all your time, especially during the holidays. Thank you for that. Let's increase your pay. She said that they were pushed to the point that she felt demoralized and they were not allowed to say anything. If you feel that you're not allowed to say anything, it's because of the atmosphere. You are oppressed. Absolutely toxic environment is what she said. And this was interesting. She said that she knew that the Cassies were watching that video or that one of their birds were watching it. I like that term, one of their birds. And so she spoke to them directly. And she said, the world knows what you did. Are you going to own this and take the consequences for what you've done? Emily knows a lot. And it's fair. I would not expect her to spill it all, but it's going to get spilled. Yes, so the statements that, before I go on to the next three, the statements that Gary has made recently, I know that there was a video he pulled on. I'm not going to talk about it. And if Gary and Drenda are charged with a crime, any statements they make can be used as evidence against them to impeach them, to even establish intent, knowledge. So I know I'm interested in all people, all perpetrators coming to justice, and that includes anybody that covered it up. All right, so the next whistleblower is Kelly Tosca. She said that she started in late 2011, and she was a graphic designer, and she did events and production designs, and she was a photographer, she said. And I'm just going to go through highlights because this is taking a lot longer than I wanted to, because she didn't have any direct knowledge of any victims, but what she offers from her statements is the toxicity of the organization. She said that there were a couple of times that when she first started, she was made to work additional hours over and above of what she worked, and they, instead of paying them, they would give them extra time off. She didn't want that. She wanted to get paid. But the first year she let it go, but then when she brought it up, she was told that's not necessarily in the budget, which Laura Lynn was asking her, isn't that strange since this is a prosperity ministry? And she admitted, Kelsey said, yeah, it's a well-funded church, what Laura Lynn was pointing out. And it's hard to reconcile that. Again, what I was talking about, it's the fat cats up in the Queen's Court, and those peasants are not going to make a dime. They're just going to get by with, pennies. And that appeared to be from what she was saying. She talked about the Prosperity Church, not knowing it was, but, just doing all these hours and being run down. And the media team that she saw was just being run down, having no help, people that quit, and they didn't have the teams that they needed, the people that they needed to do the job. And she was told that she did not have a good work ethic. Running them down again, making incredible demands and telling them they don't have a good work ethic. All the while she's begging for help. But she wasn't being heard on that. Well, of course not. That's not the environment. It's an oppressive environment. And unfortunately, these people that are coming in there, they're so young, and it's horrible. She was expected to be available 24/7. And if she was not, she would be made to feel less than. She talks about going on a hiking trip, and she didn't have cell service, and they couldn't get in touch with her. And the next Monday, she was told that she wasn't committed to her job. All that she's done before, all the overtime that she's done that she hasn't been paid for, that's nothing to them. That spirit is disgusting, absolutely horrendous, telling her she's not committed to her job. She felt like she had to choose between putting in the time at work and with her family. And in the context of the church saying how family is so important. So how would she be used as a witness? Well, again, another one, setting that stage, that theme of that oppressive work environment, how things just get covered up and you're told to shut up. That's important. She talked about the media team, that they just looked horrible. And she talks about the Fire and Ice play that Cassie wrote to reach the youth. And, again, just talking about that. She finally left in 2014, but before that, just those years that she was there, that was so hard on her that when she left, she said that her creativity felt like she had nothing left. Boy, did they suck that out of her. And she was also ready to walk away from her faith. That's horrible. So after she left, she said that she did missions for a year, and then she did not set foot in a church for 6 years. She even mentioned to the staff, consider giving the tithes to the staff members because they were so run ragged. They probably didn't like that. Next is Cassie Edie, or Edie. Cassie Edie or Edie. So in 2010, she was hired as a receptionist. And she helped with the dream team, which were the volunteers. And she said she loved it at first. And she did not understand the prosperity doctrine. And I think that Kelsey said similarly, she didn't as well. And it could be they just went into this church. They were excited to go work for this big church, and they didn't understand that. And she was helping Holly Patton, who was one of their daughters, who was an executive assistant to Drenda and Gary. And then so she Holly took care of Drenda, and then she took care of Gary. But then when Holly went on maternity leave and left, she was doing both of them. And you know what I missed that was extremely, extremely riveting? I can't believe I missed it. But Kelsey, sorry, I'm going back. Kelsey talked about her mom getting diagnosed with cancer, and then her grandmother getting diagnosed with cancer a week later. And that at first they were considerate, but then they just continued to demand. And she couldn't even take time off of work to be with them. She couldn't take time off of work to go with them for their therapy. And that was just horrendous. I mean, that's a young girl dealing with such stress. That's horrible. And I would want to use her for that, because that is outrageous. Use her as a witness it paints the picture of just how insensitive and cruel they are. Now, on the other hand, because I have to think about it as a litigator, there are holes that can be poked into everything, and just, every place that you can work could be like that. But this, again, is a ministry, and the more information, and the prosecutor that eventually prosecutes these cases, they decide which evidence is the best evidence for the case, what they will end up using. So back to Cassie. She is the assistant, and she's talking about at a drop of a dime, she has to be ready with her laptop if they call on her. And that it was very hard for her to get time off. This is a pattern. And Drenda's saying, you'll sleep when you're dead. I would want that in evidence. And she can. If there's a case against Drenda where Drenda's the defendant, and that's what Cassie heard, she can bring that in. It's a statement that Drenda made. So Cassie starts talking about these panic attacks dealing with Drenda. And it was hard dealing with both of them, but she does talk about how Gary had a good personality, he was funny. And she talks about Drenda, if she didn't have an answer, if Drenda's asking her something and she didn't have an answer right away, that wasn't good enough for Drenda. So this, again, it's that common theme, nothing's good enough, and they're made to work harder. And if you don't do what she does, you're made to feel bad about yourself. She was made to feel like she was a horrible assistant. And she was also told that she had the spirit of offense or gossip. In 2013, Tom Cassie released music, and this is when she talks about these large offices that Gary and Drenda had that was turned into a studio for Tom to record the music. She said that this was in spring, summer of 2013, and she would see a young lady coming in. So is this the now wife? At the time, he was married to his first wife. And she told Drenda about it, and that's when Drenda said, "You've got the spirit of gossip." And she says to Cassie, "Tom is like a rock star. He likes to look cool in front of the youth." Well, that puts me on notice, Drenda, that you're completely aware of what the youth think of him. You see what's going on. You knew he was grooming. So this young girl became a media assistant, and she was left alone with Tom for hours, editing. So then he gets divorced, and now this 15-year-old is his wife. She finds out later. She said that after she was bringing this up, she was treated bad after that. There was 2 other people, staff members, that were put in charge of her, and then she became their assistant, which probably, she said, helped her panic attacks because she didn't have to deal directly with Drenda, but they were bullying her. The spirit of bullying was alive and well there. And so she said that Drenda would tell her that Drenda did not like the fact that she lived in an apartment with Kelsey. And she felt that they would sit around their house, their apartment, and talk about Drenda. Well, if that's not a spirit of insecurity, I don't know what is. She obviously knew that people had the right to. Why would she say that? That's really interesting. She felt like she was going to be fired. She started looking for a job, and about a month later, she said that she was fired. She's now married. She has children, and she talks about how she can't understand how people would cover like this when you're dealing with children who are victims. In the context of, we know that Drenda says, they're after your kids. That is in direct conflict of what we know of her covering up for even a crime against her own kid. So while she might have made these bold statements or even lobbied for children, her covering up negates that, and using the youth and the youth group as labor, child labor, that's taking advantage of children. You're not for the kids. She's after the kids. She said that you could tell who was in charge, and she did not understand grooming at that time. And now she understands the importance of it. So as these people left, she also said that when she left, it took her time to get back into a church as well. These people were greatly impacted in a negative way from working at that church, being a part of that church, volunteering. And then we get to Ben Patton, and it appears that his brother perhaps is married to Holly, or maybe it's a cousin, I'm not sure. No, he says Holly is his sister-in-law, so that would be his brother married to her. And he says that he has known the family, the Cassie family, since he was age 9. I don't know how old he is now, but he's a young man. So he knew Olivia because he said that she was the youngest sister of Tom Cassie's first wife and Kirsten's best friend. And he talked about having left the church about 10 or 12 years ago. And even after he left, then he went back for a little bit to volunteer in the coffee shop. But he just talks about, I think he would be a great witness because he has such personal knowledge for such a great amount of time with the church, and he's related to somebody there. So that's somebody that would be great, a credible witness for the prosecution, because he's coming forward against the Cassie family. Meanwhile, he is a family member through his brother's marriage. He said that it was more about performance and image in regard to the Cassies. He talked about the revolving door, how people did not last there. And basically that they could not say no to anything that was being asked of them by the Cassies or by the leadership. Again, painting that picture, such an abusive, oppressive environment. He said that he only made $25,000 a year, and this correlates to what the others were saying, how they were paid so poorly. And it's so troubling because, again, this is a huge ministry. I don't know how much they bring in, but we know it's a lot. He talked about safe harbor meetings where they said it would be safe to talk about concerns, and it became the opposite of safety. That Drenda would make staff members cry. They would be in tears. They would be publicly humiliated. And he talked about one in particular where the parents of the staff member, apparently they worked there too. They were there while their child, an adult, was publicly humiliated. And that is just, it's unfathomable to me. It just reminds me of the verse I talked about the other day with the blind man who he was healed by Jesus on the Sabbath, and the Pharisees couldn't stand that, brings in the parents, and the parents said, go ask him, he's of age. And they're afraid. And I think that this is all a lack of courage. And maybe even, I don't know, I'm just speculating here, maybe they drove out the people that had a backbone in the church. People that had a backbone left, perhaps. I would love to hear from them. So lots of intimidation, lots of tactics. And he goes through all of it, and people, asking for a raise, which is consistent with what the others said. And they wouldn't get it. And that even family members would say, don't come up against them because you could be the subject of a sermon. He said it took him 10 to 12 years to get back into a church. It's sad. None of them wanted to go into a church after they left there. He talked about there being over 20 victims, and that Drenda saying this is a smear campaign. What does this remind you of? Joni. It's all a smear campaign against them. Nothing to see here. And Ben was talking about that they love to talk about deception. That they love to talk about deception. But they're the ones that are the deceivers. And he talked about there being a couple of predators, not just Tom. So I think that this is going to come out when the charges are filed. I'm sure people know who they are, and maybe some people will come out, but I think we might see right now a period of just silence because these people are talking, they're being investigated. So they're talking to the sheriff's deputies or the sheriffs, and they're probably being told not to say anything while they're in that process. That makes sense. And even when they get to the prosecutor, there's probably going to be a period of time that we don't hear from them. That makes sense. I would say the same thing. But it's up to them. I mean, if they want to come out and make statements, they can. I think that this is so big that this is going to become a documentary at some point. And so we're going to hear from them, whether there's a trial or whether there's a documentary. We're going to hear about this stuff. Ben said that he loves Pastor Gary, feels that he has a good heart, felt that he was potentially manipulated, but that he has chosen to be complicit, which is problematic for me because that means that you lack courage. So these whistleblowers have painted the picture of the atmosphere at this church. This is an atmosphere that fosters abuse, and we can clearly see why the enemy got a foothold in there. It was wide open. That door was wide open. And the more and more that Tom got away with what he was doing, he was emboldened and continued to do it. So this is coming to a screeching halt, it appears. I do expect, like I said, charges soon, hopefully. It just depends on how much information they have to go through. Videos, documents, and they have to talk to these people. They have to catalog everything. It's a lengthy process. So I'll be watching for it. I will report back on any updates, anything that comes out. But I wanted to go through what we have so far and how I look at it as a prosecutor. And, you know, we have this timeline, we have this basis, this base, so to speak, and you add more information as you get it. Things would be removed potentially that might not be talked about in a trial, but I'll bet you that there's going to be well, we don't even know exactly what he did. We don't have that yet. I haven't heard anybody of what exactly happened, but we know that they were SA, instances of SA. So if he takes a plea, you know, we might not hear about it unless there's a documentary. If it goes to trial, we will. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any comments and anything you'd like to add or share, go ahead and leave that in the comment section. I know this was incredibly long, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.